those of you who don't know Matthew, we met for the first time last September when he did a rather terrific presentation for us in Owerish. And it was a very memorable event. It was a sellout crowd. But today's theme slightly different. That was more on the environmental side. And today, I think, has a more educational theme, but hopefully there will be an environmental slant to it all as well. Matthew, the floor is yours.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much, Chris, for hosting me again. It was really fun doing the last one, and it's good to be mixing it up with a virtual one now. Also, thanks everyone for coming and taking the time out. I'm gonna talk through some things, but please at any time throw comments into the chat and questions and so on, and I'll just kind of stop and interact with those as I go. I've got them all open just there. So hi, I'm Matthew Shribman, and my mission is to engage, enthuse, and empower through education. All around the world, people are disengaged from learning, and all too often, we've had our curiosity driven out of us by an education system that's outdated. We find science inaccessible, we find maths too hard, we find poetry a waste of time, and we find history boring. And what's worse is that many of us don't even have access to education that may or may not be interesting. Either way, all of us enter an enormously complex world that none of us could ever fully understand, and all of us, no matter how smart, inevitably make bad decisions. And these bad decisions can be as small as taking a disposable plastic cup when we don't need to, or as large as billions of people taking disposable plastic cups. They can be as small as dropping a cigarette butt, or as large as approving the destruction of a rainforest, if you end up in a position to do so. But it's not just that we make bad decisions, we often don't seek to understand, or we struggle to amidst all the noise, and the world is getting noisier, struggle to understand how we could change the course of humanity for the better. And I think that's partly because of what we've learnt or not learnt, and partly because we live in a world whose primary and all too pervasive pursuit is profit for profit's sake, where many of the people in charge are so entrenched in business as usual that they can't even make space for improving the world. So we misplace our time, we misplace our desires, and we misplace our money in things that abuse the planet and the biosphere. And whilst this might not have been such a big problem a few hundred years ago, now there are 8 billion of us. We are on the brink of irreversible disaster, and civilization is at stake. There are a couple of quotes from Professor Jonas Rogström, who is head of the Potsdam Climate Institute, that I've just grabbed here just to give a sense of where we are now. He says that the current most likely trajectory that we are on at the moment would leave us in a world that would likely support only half of the current human population. The current trajectory would leave us in a world that would only likely support half of the current human population. We've entered a state of global emergency with something that is a high risk situation, but tiny in comparison to the climate crisis. He also says, indeed, the consequences of a 4 degrees C warmer world are so terrifying that most scientists would rather not contemplate them, let alone work out a survival strategy. So this is the situation we find ourselves in. I don't think many of the world's problems have simple solutions, but I do know this. The best solutions all begin with understanding, and our ability to understand is entirely shaped by what we know and what we learn, not just at school, but over the course of our entire lives. So this is what drives me every day. I want to teach, and I want to inspire people to change the world for the better. I want to help to build a future where everyone, regardless of their background, upbringing, location, age, has access to brilliant education, because there is so much untapped brain power, so much unrealized potential in the world, and my work is dedicating to trying to unleash that. Of all the times in history, I think we need people to be learning, and we need people to want to learn, because as I was saying before, humanity might just depend on it. So whilst COVID-19 has brought with it a lot of strife, it's also given us a brief window to step back and consider. It's a strange time and a time of great difficulty, but it's also a time of great opportunity, and it's time to think about how we can reshape our chaotic and beautiful world for the better. Perhaps now more people than ever have been thinking really deeply about how damaging the pursuit of profit for its own sake is, and how important it is for us to be a lot more careful with our time, and more creative about shaping a more livable future, and about using the power we have for the right things. And I really strongly think that this is a major time when if we don't make the right choices, then there won't be much of a future ahead of us. And certainly the science on that is quite stark and clear. Anyway, so I've been very lucky in life, from the university I went to meeting many astonishingly talented people along the way. And I am really passionate about using what I have to give back to advocate for better education, better environmental stewardship, and better justice. I really want to try and make the world a better place. And so that's why I've been spent so much of my life teaching in a way that's positive and constructive, and trying to build a platform that stands up for those who can't be heard, like trees. So I've been building this online school, and I'm gonna switch over. In fact, how do I do this? Let me switch. Am I able to share my screen? I think there should, oh, here we go.
You should be able to.
Oh, it says host disabled attendee screen sharing. So to the right of the share button that you have, Chris, there should be an arrow that allows you to adjust the settings that I can.
Ooh, so talk me through this again. The share, I have to.
Sorry, Al. So just to the right of where it says share in green, the green button at the bottom, there should be a smaller arrow. I think if you click that, then it will allow you to allow participants to share their screen. No, I think it's the one below that, maybe. Just allowing participants to begin screen
sharing. All participants. We should have rehearsed this bit, shouldn't we? One participant at a time, all participants. Try that now. Does that work?
Oh, here we go. Yes, we've got it. Great.
Voila. Okay, panic over. I shall now mute myself again.
Here we go. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay, cool. I will just move the chat over to there so I don't be distracted by it. Sorry, all tech movements. So yeah, I've been setting up this online school. It is a global school for students to learn, interact, and be inspired by charismatic role models and exceptional teachers for free. We set this up because with schools closing around the world, we saw that millions would be missing out on education. And whilst we set it up because of COVID, we are building AimHi for the future, because we really think that the role of teachers is changing. How do I get over to there? There we go. Yeah, the role of teachers is changing more than ever before. It's we are in a world where so much information is online. And yet with unprecedented challenges around us, far too many people are demotivated, disempowered, and disengaged, even though in theory, so many of the solutions are there, and we live in such an interconnected world. And so that was the main motivation for setting this up. And we've been lucky to have some support from BBC News, and now we're supported by the Eden Project as well. And we're chatting to the UNHCR about getting these resources out more broadly to refugees, and we've been quite lucky with the support that we've had so far. And yeah, I've got a little map actually. Here we go. So yeah, we've had students in 75 countries, and we've had about 10,000 so far. I've basically laid this out as I would a lesson board if I were teaching a lesson. And so scattered around, you will see many things like this that are actually completely unrelated, but are designed to give people an inspiring bit of interest. So does anyone see what this is? Or maybe that's too small. And I do welcome guesses in the chat. Throw your guesses into the chat if you can see what that pixelated image is. And also, I'm keen to know what people think this might be as well.
One's a little frog.
Yeah, exactly. So someone came in with the bottom. The bottom left is a frog on a running wheel in the middle of the wilderness, which some Dutch scientists set up because they wanted to see if animals would go and play on a running wheel if they gave it to them and keep returning for fun. And there was a frog that came and played on the wheel, but also they found that mice would return to the wheel over and over again because they enjoyed it so much. And this is completely unrelated, but it's interesting and it holds the attention of the students. What about this? Does anyone know what this is in the bottom right?
Sea snake.
In the bottom right is a picaya worm. And a picaya worm is, we believe our great grandparent. It's one of our most distant ancestors, and it's just an image of what it used to look like swimming around the sea. Anyway, back to the school. So another thing that we're trying to achieve with the school is not just making education a lot more inspiring, a lot more accessible, but also we're taking into account the fact that celebrity culture is shifting. And so I saw this thing a few years ago that I found really compelling, which was like a word cloud. And I tried to find it for this, but I have never been able to find it since. But somebody made a word cloud where they were looking at who were the big role models in the 1700s and the 1800s. Who were the people who were looked to, who were kind of famous and well-known and respected. And it showed very clearly that in these earlier times, it was all your kind of scientists and it was all your poets and explorers and things like that. And then it showed a shift towards the 1900s and towards the 21st century. And it showed that role models have really shifted towards more like models and reality TV and so on. And so this was another thing that we really wanted to do with the school. It was not just create a space that was highly inspiring for students and really engaging for them, but also help to bring in a lot better role models. So as an example of what we're doing in this space, let's move back a little bit there. So Jane Goodall is coming on to one of our live lessons on the 10th of June. And we have, sorry, I should say Dr. Jane Goodall, or Dame, and George Monbiot as well, who's a well-known British environmentalist, is also coming on. And we've started running these live lessons with guests, and it's incredible to see the effect that this has, where normally you have students all around the world who only have access to the people that their school can bring in. And now we're able to create this entirely free open online resource where anyone can log in and anyone can meet Jane Goodall or George Monbiot, ask them questions and learn directly from them. And this is one of the major things that we're trying to change, is we're trying to rethink the way education works, so that rather than it being the traditional model of trying to, I shall move up here actually. So we're trying to rethink what success should be in education. For such a long time, success has been about short-term information recall. It's about, it seems crazy to me that I had to learn the periodic table at university. Why on earth would I have to learn the periodic table when you have a phone with you? Or it's something that seems crazy to have to spend your time doing when we live in the information age. Surely success now should be a lot more about how much students leave a lesson feeling enthused and empowered. Going back to that story, actually, I've got this is quite unrelated, but quite a good story about learning the periodic table is that when I was really young, my dad used to say this word to me and my brother and sister he would just say, "Haheli bebkanof nanam galsips clarka," and we never knew what it meant. And we always just thought it was like a made up thing that he used to say. And he would say like, "Haheli bebkanof nanam galsips clarka." All right, good night, guys. And then off he'd go. And it wasn't until I was sat in my second year at university trying to learn the periodic table, hating it because I'm so bad at learning things, that I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, it reads Haheli bebkanof nanam galsips clarka if you read it all the way through, and that takes you down to about the fourth line. So for anyone trying to learn the periodic table, there is your way in. Anyway, so one of the things we're trying to do with the school is we're trying to redefine what success means. We're trying to focus our lessons around enthusiasm and empowerment and inspiring kids. We're also trying to bring in better role models for the people that we're teaching, because we think that the main focus of a school nowadays should be about inspiring curiosity, nurturing critical thinking skills, demystifying complex concepts, building bridges between disciplines, which is one of the big things that we're doing as well, because it's so easy to do this online, is that we're able to bring together teachers from different subjects, put them in the room together, and then they can discuss topics. And it's really a beautiful thing to watch students react in a different way as they see teachers learning from one another. It was something that was pointed out to me by a researcher at Cambridge who's been taking interest in what we're doing, and they said it's very strange that kids at school do not really get much of an opportunity to see adults interacting with one another. And yet that's one of the things that we're doing that seems to be proving really, really popular. So let's go back up here actually. It's quite crazy moving around on a board instead of slides, but it's something that the students love with all the stimulating colors, but I'm sorry that's kind of jerking around a little bit. So yes, what we've been doing to re-summarize is we've been assembling exceptional teachers and charismatic role models. We've been getting people with outstanding knowledge and strong characters and an ability to interconnect highly varied ideas. And we've been doing this on an online platform which overcomes challenges of distance and separation. And also it has so many advantages that are unforeseen to begin with, but then develop, like disruptive behavior is so easy both to ignore, for one, because you can just cut people out of the chat, but also better, it's so much easier to turn it around because you can take kids who are being disruptive and you can embrace the humor and the creativity with which they're being disruptive without really distracting the lesson too much. And then by involving them and making them feel valued, they suddenly are then plunged straight back into the lesson and feeling like it's a much more relevant thing for them to be doing and a lot more involved with it. So I think, yeah, by having teachers who are focusing on being charismatic tour guides and by making the kids feel valued and empowered, we're able to open up a lot more. We're able to help our students to want to learn a lot more. For example, two things that I didn't know when I left school that I probably should have known if I'd had better teachers. Number one is just two examples that I brought up. The correlation between how much money you have and how happy you are. And all the studies that have been done at Harvard showing the diminishing returns of increasing amounts of wealth, and how as you get richer, it doesn't really do anything to change how happy you are. That's something that that we're about to cover with students. And another thing is this. Does anyone know what this is here? It's called Pando. I'm wondering if anyone's heard of it. It's quite interesting flipping from running these lessons to doing this, because the lessons have been my standard way of interacting over the internet for a long time. And normally you have this chat stream of students where they're just pouring in answers and it's moving at 100 miles an hour. And now I'm looking over at the chat stream and nobody knows what Pando is. So I'll just tell you. So Pando is the largest tree in the world. So it's a quaking aspen. Not a giant sequoia. It's quaking aspen, and quaking aspens are able to grow by growing their roots underground and then sprouting in another position. So what you have here are tens of thousands of trees, or what seems like tens of thousands of trees, all spread out around the forest. and I think it's something like 30,000 trees. It appears to be Pando. If you take Pando and you compare it to the largest giant sequoia, how much bigger do you think Pando is?
500.
Seeing if anyone's going to jump in on the chat. Someone said 520 times. Pando's, it's about 5 or 10% bigger, which really puts into perspective how enormous the giant sequoias are. They're absolutely huge. Anyway, I am going to carry on and show you more about the kind of teachers that we're involving. So this is Phil. I was talking about doing collaborative lives this morning. Phil is an award-winning poet. He's taught upwards of 200,000 students, and he's performed with Sydney Opera House, TEDx, and so on. And he's in Sydney. He's in Sydney. He's on the other side of the world, and yet him and I were running a collaborative lesson this morning that went out on our channel, and it proved extremely popular. And we did a crossover that helped people to see the bridges between English and science that they hadn't seen before. So I'll show you what he showed to me, which was amazing. He showed me this poem, which has been encoded into the DNA of a bacteria. And so obviously a DNA strand has, well, there are two sides to a DNA strand. And so on one side of the DNA strand is this poem. And then because you have the mirror image, as it were, the inverted version of the DNA strand on the other side, the poem has an opposite poem on the other side used by the letter encoding that was worked out by the poet. And so this is the kind of call of the poem that's created by the DNA. And then this is the RNA that is then created, which results in a protein being formed as well. So not only is this encoded into the DNA of the bacteria, but it then produces this RNA, which, for those who don't know, is the kind of genetic material that then goes off to form proteins. And he has coded this protein so that not only does it contain a poem, but the RNA codes for a protein that is fluorescent. So the poem talks about any style of life is prim, and then the response is the fairy is rosy of glow. And this bacteria actually glows slightly red. Its fluorescence is slightly red as a consequence of the RNA that's producing the protein. Which I thought was absolutely fantastic. And the other thing is I'm discovering lots of this stuff on the live, because I've told him, don't tell me too much stuff. I want the students to see that we are discovering things as well, and that we're not infallible, that we don't know everything, that we are all on this journey of discovery together, and that it's all about curiosity. And this kind of format of learning is quite amazing in that, to begin with, we were very focused on, let's make sure we are keeping it to 11 to 18-year-olds, because that's our target. Those are the people of school age. We'll be able to work with parents, with teachers, and so on. But what we found is that there is an incredibly large audience of people in their 20s, 30s, 40s who keep tuning in to learn about these things, because I think that the way that we're teaching them is very kind of accessible and open. Anyway, I was thinking, rather than just telling you that the school is good, and hoping that you'll believe me, I was thinking that maybe instead what I could do is I could give you all like I'll do a really short condensed version of a lesson, if you'd like that. I will, these are the options I've got for you. Which would you like to learn about? And do throw your votes into the chat while I have some water. Okay, we've got a couple of Deja Vus, a couple of stars for water wet. Deja Vu seems to be taking it. Deja Vu seems to be winning. Okay, I'll do Deja Vu. Before I do Deja Vu though, do you want to just hear what a star sounds like? I'll just show you quickly anyway, because it's cool. Still work if I do that. So I'm going to pause that because I'm also worried that it might be ear splitting for some. I'll just plug this back in. Yes, that is the sound of a star vibrating. Obviously, we can't hear sounds in space because the vacuum of space doesn't allow the vibrations to come through. But we can work out what a star sounds like by studying it and looking at the ways that it's vibrating. And you can use those sounds to, or the interpretation of the sounds to work out what kind of star it is. Because younger stars are generally more kind of tumultuous and unpredictable, and older stars tend to kind of mature and settle into more of a vibe. Anyway, right. I will now. I'll do how does Deja Vu work? Right. You'll see the frog image again. Actually, because I think I put that in this morning. Let me just flip this over. Okay. Sorry, I just have to open up the right one. Okay, here we go. Right, what I'll do for you is a reduced version. I had to put up the video on my Instagram this morning of what's the science of deja vu 3 times to make sure the point came across. But then, okay, I'm gonna go straight to the point here because I know that obviously we're limited for time and I don't want to keep everyone too long. But I'll just give you a demonstration of the kinds of things that are mentioned along the way. A fly. What pitch do you guys think a fly buzzes at? What key of a piano would be in tune with the sound of a fly? Anyway, I'll leave that with you. These are some of the exercises that we get people to do. But the core of this lesson is based around Louise Gluck. In fact, let's do this. Okay, so drawing a fire alarm. You don't actually have to draw a fire alarm. I would ask the students to do so. But the reason why I wanted them to do this is because I wanted to draw attention to the idea that actually most of what we perceive is not actually reality. If you think about a fire alarm or a smoke detector, sorry, that's probably more common. That's probably more what I'm thinking of. If you think of a smoke detector in your house, how many of you think that you could draw a smoke detector inside your house with high levels of detail? And you can have a go at doing it if you like. I had a go at drawing one of the ones in my house. It's something that I've seen so many times before. I've seen it over and over and over again, day after day. This is the house that I grew up in. I've come back to stay with my parents during the lockdown. And I tried drawing the smoke detectors in the house and I had no idea what they looked like. I drew something like this. I thought it would be something like that. Anyway, I went to go get one and it's completely different. The point being that most of the things that we see in the world are not things that we see and properly understand. We don't properly dive into them and kind of think about the shape and the texture and so on. Instead, we just look at them and then our brain automatically associates them with a memory. And so we have memories of having seen something like a smoke detector in the past. And so our brain just inserts that idea instead. Is there anyone on the chat who feels like they could have perfectly drawn the smoke detectors in their house? Or is everyone also on the same page as me as being unable to do so to any high quality? Yeah, everyone's saying no way, exactly. So there's again, this is coming back to poetry because I wanted to kind of get people coming to the one that I was doing with Phil later on. But this is an amazing poet called Louise Gluck. And Louise Gluck said, a famous quote from her is, "You see the world once as a child, and the rest is just memories." And I think this is not only a really, really beautiful way of summarizing it, but also incredibly accurate, because that is how we perceive most of the world. Most of the world is just our associations with memories. So I will now explain to you how Deja Vu works. And also I found this picture of an eye on the internet, and that's pretty horrible, but it turns out it's just a prop that you can buy from eBay. And I was worried that it was actually a real eye. Anyway, so here's how it works. I'll just move that over there. First thing, your brain will perceive some, oh, let me just move that out of the way. So your eye will see something. So let's say that you've spotted a four-leaf clover on the ground and it's blue, and so you know it's definitely lucky. And so the visual information enters your eye. And then that visual information travels down the nerves of your eye and then into the back of your brain, which is called the occipital lobe, but you don't need to know that. But this is the area of the eye that processes visual information. Now it's arranged into these nice towers, kind of one next to the other like this, so that you have a tower that understands left vision, and then a tower that understands right vision, then a left, then a right, and then a left, and then a right, and so on. Because this means it helps us to see in 3D. It helps the left vision communicate with the right vision. And there have been some amazing, although very cruel experiments done where animals have had one of their eyes restricted from birth, and it's been shown that one of the sets of towers doesn't grow and the other set just takes it over. And so people can become blind due to the non-development of their occipital lobe if their eyes aren't stimulated enough. And in fact, another amazing fact before I carry on with Deja Vu is this: if your occipital lobe is completely faulty and doesn't work at all, then you can't see, but you still have reflex cells in the back of your eyes, which means that if somebody comes to attack you and moves very quickly towards your face, you will still be able to dodge them or block them, even though you can't see, because you still have that reflex active in your eyes. Anyway, so back to Deja Vu and how it works. So you see the clover and the information comes into your eyes, and then the information travels down the nerves and into the occipital cortex. And the occipital cortex is just processing the visual information. Now I'm going to turn this into a little bit of a cartoon. So this isn't completely accurate now, but it's good enough to explain how Deja Vu works. So the information then travels from your occipital lobe to the area of your brain that is responsible for your consciousness. Now I need to move that slightly there so I can get a white color. Here we go. And so if this region of your brain here is responsible for your consciousness, I'm just gonna label it like that, then you will then become conscious of the visual information that you're seeing. Now your consciousness, as we were talking about before, wants to compare this information with information elsewhere in the brain in your memory. And so the normal process is that you see the clover, the information travels into your occipital lobe, which processes the visuals, and then the visual information goes to your consciousness, and then you're conscious of seeing this clover. And you compare it with your memories, and your memories are like, yeah, we've seen one of those before, this is so boring, and that's why you rarely really process the clover. And so your memory just like fires back at you some pictures of clovers to fill in the gap, so you don't have to put in any effort really, which is why, you know, life in some ways becomes a lot easier as you get older, because we don't really need to process as much information. But also that's sad in some ways, because we should always try to process information. Anyway, the other thing that's happening is the occipital lobe is storing some information directly with the memory, whilst the consciousness is also storing information to make new memories. So these blue arrows represent memories being made. Now, Deja vu happens when, and this is the prevailing theory, and there are other people with different ideas, but this is the one that's most popular, is that we see the clover, the information travels to our occipital lobe, And then our occipital lobe, for some reason, stores memories unusually quickly. And so you're laying down memories very, very quickly, which means that by the time you are conscious of the fact that you're seeing a clover, your brain already contains memories of this exact clover, not just a clover, but this exact one. Your brain contains the exact memories of this experience because you're laying down those memories as they're happening. And so whilst normally your consciousness is doing this and then your memories are slightly behind, with deja vu, your memories get a little bit ahead, which is why deja vu feels so much like I have definitely seen this before, because you are comparing with your memory and your memory has this exact record in it because it's remembering the exact thing that you're experiencing. It's just all happening in the wrong order. But if you ever when the next time you get deja vu, try to use that moment to predict what's going to happen next, because you have the sense of familiarity, but you also lack the ability to predict what's going to happen next because it is impossible to predict because you haven't experienced it yet. Anyway, that would be the kind of thing that we would show to our students to explain to them something like consciousness and get them thinking about neurology, and then we would move into, I'm just going to bring this back. And then from there, we would move into doing more detailed things. We would go into more depth about depth in certain courses. So I'm just going to go back to here. There we go. Get rid of that. So from there, we then also run courses that that go more into depth about kind of syllabus topics and so on. But the thing is, if we just ran a physics course, just straight from the beginning, we would get people who wanted to pass their exams, but we would lose a lot of people who are kind of lacking interest and don't really care. But the thing is, the way we're running this school is that we've inspired people, we've brought a large number of people with us, and then they want to learn about the things that they would traditionally find more boring. And also we get to teach them from teachers who are very, very good at teaching. And it seems to be working. It's building a large following of people, and it's certainly spread across a lot of countries so far. And my hope is that Jane's one as well will also help to continue to grow it. Anyway, I will start to wrap up, but I just wanted to say for the end, if you'd like to see more about it, then the website is. I shall draw the website on here. But we are generally seeking partners who have similar beliefs to us, seeking friends in this, and seeking people who are aligned with our mission of wanting to change the world for the better through education, wanting to help us offer live interactive lessons where students can learn, interact, and be inspired by charismatic role models and exceptional educators for free on a smartphone or a computer. So thanks for watching, and thanks again to the British Portuguese Chamber of Commerce and Chris Barton and his team for hosting me. And we should now move to questions, I suppose. I'll just write down the website in case anyone wants to see it.
So Matthew, I was going to kickstart the questions. How do you, I've used the word recruit, how do you recruit students? How do you contact them? How do you engage with them? Okay, so
engagement with, do you mean how are we building the number of students, or how do we engage with them on the line? Okay, so in terms of the numbers, we've tried a few different things. We were trying to go to schools, and I think that schools would normally be more receptive, but I think they've all been so overwhelmed by COVID-19, and it's actually been surprisingly difficult to run through schools. One of the big things that we want to do is our target is the state-run schools, the ones that don't have many of the privileges that the other ones do. And sorry, I'll switch off screen share. Yeah, it was some of the schools that don't have the privileges, but actually it's been a lot easier to talk to the private schools, but they are interested in the same missions of distributing to kids. So for example, Harrow School is one of the big ones in London, and they are really on board with helping to spread the word about our lives. So that's schools. Parents is something we're yet to do as much of, because the main thing we've been doing so far is just going direct to students. I mean, I've spent many years building a platform as a kind of online educator, and there are a lot of students who follow me already, and so it's been easier to create the kind of word of mouth there. Also, the other thing is that because we believe so much in education being driven by curiosity, we think that it sometimes works a lot better when we have students coming to us because they found us, and then going back to their parents being like, we found this really cool thing. And we've seen that a lot of times in terms of the surveys that we've run and the feedback that we've had, that there are a lot of kids who've just found us themselves, showed it to their parents being like, whoa, this is really great. And then they've continued coming back. So I think our main growth at the moment is through students, through social media, and through through those online channels and the British Portuguese Chamber of Commerce. Yes.
One of the greatest multipliers out there. So for years and years, parents have been kind of had a war with their children. They've been spending too much screen time. You're kind of encouraging even more screen time being in front of these devices. Is there a conflict there at all?
I'm a big believer in smaller amounts of screen time. And I really think kids need to get out into the real world a lot more. But the thing is, like, in many ways, screen time is quite an inevitability. And when, especially during a lockdown, when people are stuck inside, it becomes even more of an inevitability. People are going to be scrolling through their screens. And this was something that was often asked of me when I was doing my science presenting, was, how are you, like, what's the big aim? Like, what do you want to do? Like, do you want to do a BBC documentary or something like that? And for me, that wasn't necessarily the target. The target was just to reach the people whom it was important to reach. And I think that kids at the moment are spending loads of time on their phones. And so if we create something that works on a phone, that is highly engaging and will be much more educational and much more interesting, then rather than fighting screen time, we go with it, but we turn it into a positive thing. And I think that's often the case with new technology. I mean, it is what you make it. And so we're trying to turn it into something good.
There you go. So I see Tim Vieira is asking the question in the chat. Do you have a full-scale curriculum or just certain lessons?
Okay, so this is something, because we've been building this up from the beginning, our main aim so far has been to get kids inspired and interested. And so we've been focusing on these things around big questions like, what is deja vu? Why do we sleep? What does freedom taste like? And the philosophy ones, that kind of stuff. And that pulls people in. But then once people are in, then we're starting to run these high school ones. So at the moment, we're following generally UK curriculum. But because we have an understanding that curricula are quite different around the world, we're keeping it kind of general and open so that it can be followed by people all around the world, because that's where our audience is. But this is especially easy in science, because in science, physics is pretty much the same all the way around the world. So we're focusing on those to begin with. Those are the ones that we're running much stricter kind of curriculum based things. So I'm doing a course on electricity. There's this amazing doctor of oncology from Oxford, and she's doing a course about cancer, but she's also going to do a lot of GCSE and A-level biology. And then another guy called Josh Wick, who's a great biology teacher, and he's running biology courses. So there are syllabus-focused things, but the main aim is to get kids inspired and energized, because we want them to want to learn. And I think the platform is a test of that in itself, because if the kids don't want to learn, it's so much easier to close an internet tab than it is to leave a classroom. So if we don't make it good, it won't work.
Very good. A question here from Tiago. He's from a company called Area 67. And they specialize in gamification. And he's asking, do you use any kind of gamification in your lessons?
So this is something that we really want to build into. At the moment, we're quite limited by the platforms that we're using, because we've been setting this up as quickly as possible. But gamification is something I think is really important when it's done in the right way. I mean, I think some of our students are already competing to kind of be the most active on the chat, and some of them have been taking that to silly extremes. But in terms of gamifying things, I'm really keen on doing that, provided it's in a way that is educational and not distracting, which I know there are lots of brilliant people doing and working on really hard. So I think that's something that we're keen to like partner with other organizations.
Hint there to Tiago to contact Matthew later. Jessica from the British School here in Lisbon is asking, is there any platform you've been particularly impressed by to do the lessons? So we're on Zoom today, but you have your own AimHi platform, don't you?
So again, we're quite driven by the notion that we should go where the students are rather than trying to fight to get them somewhere else. So we have been, almost every single lesson I tell people who are watching on Facebook, stop watching on Facebook because you can't see most of the interaction. Like Facebook gives people a very limited experience of what we're doing. And they still go back to Facebook because that's their platform. And it's very difficult to make people move. So instead our philosophy has been go to where people are. So we run the live streams on our own platform, but we also run them on Facebook, on YouTube, on all kinds of different places, Periscope and so on.
Yeah, and it's just been pointed out to me that I didn't read the whole of Jessica's question because the chat was scrolling and I missed, I don't know if you can scroll up a bit there. I think she was asking what, do you just give lessons in English or do you also do local languages?
So I've now grabbed the questions as well. Sorry,
good.
Over on the distant screen over there, of the many thousands of screens. What age group are the students? Good question. I knew I should have put that in. The students are mainly 11 to 18. However, there are some going down to age 7. And as I said before, we've got people in their 30s and 40s who are watching this as well.
I think you've got one in your 60s as well. Me, I've watched a lesson or two.
Oh, great,
I think what drew me in was the unusual titles, because you have some very strange titles, which I think are, well, attractive to the likes of me. So I remember there was Going Inside a Black Hole, Water Isn't Wet, what's all that about? Life on Mars. A very interesting one, Will Brexit End the EU? So that was one of the titles of one of the lessons that you had. Why the colour blue doesn't exist, surely it does, I don't know. And why are millions of people in China invisible? All terrific titles. Who wouldn't want to go to class?
Yeah, in fact,
Matthew's facial expression is like, do we?
No, I'm just realizing that there was something that I meant to show. I'll just quickly show that as well. I meant to show some of the titles as examples of what you're talking about from this week. And this was one of the first guest ones that we've done as well. Rob Hopkins is an author who wrote a book called What If, and yeah, he was the kids absolutely loved him. Because he brought in the outside world and he showed them that, you know, you can do quite amazing things just by starting the right conversations and continually trying to make things change for the better. Anyway, sorry, I'll unshare my screen again.
I guess
sorry,
so.
Oh, go on.
No. Well, I was going to say a lot of the schools pride themselves on small class sizes. You must have quite enormous class sizes.
So yeah, so it varies. I think so. The largest class size we've had are into the thousands, but then some of them move with much smaller class sizes. And actually, rather than worrying about that, we've kind of been embracing that because it's really good for us. We feel like we're in a very experimental phase, and we're trying to learn as quickly as possible how do you manage these different sizes. And so yeah, some of them are quite overwhelming. And others are much more manageable, and it's really nice to see that the same students come back over and over again, and you recognize names as they scroll down the chat. But what's interesting as well is that on a live platform, people feel engaged, even if you don't actually pick up on their questions. People feel like they have a chance to take part in it. I am sorry, Jessica, there was one more bit you said. On international side, is it all in English? It is all in English at the moment, but we really want to offer stuff in local languages. And in fact, if you have any thoughts on how we might bring more local languages in, that's a really big thing that I'd love to be able to do in the long run, is bringing in more regional teachers, because the dream is that we would create a platform that is truly open to all and accessible to all.
Excellent. Any more last questions? I'm having people sending me text messages asking if I can connect you with them afterwards. So I hope you don't mind if you get a couple of emails.
No, by all means.
Just
I must say though, I do treat emails as letters. I'm very old fashioned with emails. So I tend to do emails about maybe a couple of days a week, and then I go a week or so, which is, I know is very bad. And I should be much faster with emails, but I am very, very slow with emails because I try to focus on the school.
I have noticed.
Some days I'm quick and other days I just, yes, sorry. Nicole's asked, are there lessons to motivate social awareness as well? And I think that there are, like, so the titles that you saw there, a lot of them are kind of focusing on like interesting academic ideas, but that's a big thing about bringing in the role models and the guests is we want to we want to make people a lot more aware of certain social issues. So another one that's coming up soon is I made a video with my Aunt Kathy, who's an expert of virginity and hymen biology and sexual abuse, and we made a video together about kind of misconceptions around that to try and empower especially young women. And it went viral on Instagram, and she's really keen to do a live. And I think that's the kind of thing that we want to bring in to give people exposure to that kind of stuff. And Jessica's saying that you're going to join some lessons. Please do, Jessica. You'd be very welcome.
Expanding your age group range.
Yeah.
Well done.
That's fantastic.
And what's the future likely to be? If you fast forward 2 or 3 years, where do you imagine you'll be with this project?
I would really like to see this as a truly global school, as a school that anyone can access anywhere in the world, hopefully with different languages as well, in any time zone, and they can be connected with teachers who are brilliant and talented. I think that I don't want to say that this kind of thing will replace classroom learning, because for one, I don't think it will, and for two, I don't think it would be a good thing if it did, because I think that there are huge amounts of things that you learn in a school besides the kinds of things that we teach on AimHi, and I think we're doing quite well at teaching a broad range of things, but certainly, you know, the kind of social aspects of being with people when you grow up is, I think, a very important part of learning as well. But I do see this growing into a large scale kind of global operation if we can keep it going in the way that we're doing, and that's certainly where I want it to go, because it aligns with my missions. I want to make, I mean, I came to this from science. I want to make science more accessible, and I want to use that to empower people to change the world for the better, and I see this as the best way that I could possibly do that. So I'm going to carry on working very hard on it, and hope that we get there.
So we have quite a few teachers and educators in amongst the participants. If any of them fancy themselves on screen, should they be volunteering themselves as presenters?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, this is exactly. I'm really keen to get a broad range of teachers, and so please do write. I have a kind of a bit of a backlog. It's not that it's that large of teachers. We've had quite a few teachers contact us, but just, it turns out it's a lot of work setting up a school. So if you do write to me as a teacher, please do. But just again, apologies in advance if I'm slow to respond, but I will get back to you. Excellent.
Any last questions? We're coming up to 1 minute away from the 1 hour mark, so it's been perfect timing. Very British of you, Matthew. Thank you very much for that.
My reader is saying, what topic will Dr. Jane Goodall explore in your upcoming session? So that's actually unconfirmed, although she told me this amazing story about we've got 1 minute, I'll tell the story. She told me this amazing story about being in a taxi on the way to the airport, and she was at a time when she was very famous for being an animal rights activist, and the taxi driver kept saying to her quite nasty things about, you know, how she was wasting her life, what she was doing was pointless, you know, there are children who are starving, and you know, all she cares about is animals and it doesn't matter. And rather than getting annoyed or aggressive with him, she just kind of listened, but then told him nice stories and told him positive stories of her interactions with animals. And eventually he began talking about his sister and how his sister was wasting all of her time being looking after animals in a centre in London, and eventually they arrived at the airport, and Jane didn't really feel like she'd made any progress with this guy, even though she'd been just trying to be very kind and very patient with him. But then she didn't have the right change to pay for the taxi, so she gave him a note and just said, keep the change and just please donate it to your sister. And then off she went on her flight. And anyway, when she came back to the UK, she had a letter from this guy's sister, who wrote to her to say, thank you so much for the donation to the animal welfare charity. But also, what on earth did you say to my brother? Because he's completely transformed. And now he's like coming to the center to help me, and he's talking to his friends about it. And like, how did you do this? And yeah, I found that story quite amazing when she just told me that in like an offline thing, but I presume it's published somewhere, but I don't know. But I would love for her to tell that story to the students, and for us to work around that, about how you need to change the world with kindness and patience and perseverance. So that's what I hope she'll do, but we'll see.
Very good. Thank you once again. I just wanted to give a little shout out to somebody. He was in the participants a while ago, but not here now. So a big thank you to Rui Almeida from Moneris. They're supporting these webinars that we're doing, and just a little thank you shout out for Rui and Moneris. Thank you. Excellent.
Thanks so much, Chris.
Thank you. See you again next year.
See you again next year.
Yeah. Well, let's keep on this rhythm of events now. We're going to plant 1,000 trees. Isn't that another project that you had in mind?
Oh, we had the 1,000 trees outside Parliament in Lisbon.
How's it with Parliament? Do you want to give a 20-second plug for that project? Because you wanted to do that in Lisbon.
Yeah, sure. So in October, we put 1,000 trees outside the UK Parliament, and we basically got loads of the MPs to come out, the members of Parliament to come out and talk to us. And it was a load of kind of scientists and communicators. And I think they came out expecting us to be, quite aggressive with them, but we were just really kind and patient with them. We were like, hey, this is the situation. Your plan to plant 11 million trees, that's going to sequester about 5 minutes of global emissions. So it's completely useless. You need to be talking about billions, if not trillions of trees. And so 2/3 of all the members of Parliament got a tree from us. And then 2 months later, there was an election, and they all made very large pledges for tree planting. And the Conservatives who got into power, unfortunately, made the smallest pledge. But still, their pledge was 100 times bigger than it was before. And so they went from 11 million up to a billion in terms of their planting plans, which was great. But we would, so Planet A is an organization that I helped set up, and it's called thisisplaneTA.org if you want to check it out. And it's, yeah, we'd love to do something in Lisbon as well, of a similar ilk. I actually don't know the deforestation statistics in Portugal, but certainly the UK is one of the most deforested countries in the world. So yeah, that would be cool. If anyone also wants to get in touch with me or Planet A about that, then please do.
Thank you once again. Time to say goodbye.